Good afternoon, folks. This is Fred Campos, owner of DFW Website Designers. It is a wonderful Sunday, April the 18th, 2021, and this is episode number 173 of your 3 business tips at 3 o'clock in and around 3 minutes. Last week, we spent a ton of time talking about the decision-making process as a solopreneur, small business owner, entrepreneur, about everything that has to go through your head in order to make right decisions. Today, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the right and wrong perspective. We're going to talk about the line, above the line, and below the line. When you think of making decisions, it usually comes down to trying to have the right and wrong perspective. And you know, there's no exact and certain decisions line to be there. There's a lot of gray areas, as we say, but there is some sort of line. And I'll give you some examples so you understand what I'm talking about. Because business tip number 1, you got to know where the line is. So let's say that we are talking about decisions regarding finance, okay? And that you have a goal to always operate in a positive cash flow and not go into debt per se. Then the line would be 0. Anytime your account goes below 0, you are in debt, right? Let's say you're married and you have a decision to be faithful in your marriage. Well, the line is you're not going to sleep with anybody, and when you do, you will be breaking it. So that is the line between right and wrong. And we could go through many examples of this, and this is sort of intuitive, and we all know this. But there is a very specific point that we call the line that we choose to decide what is right and wrong. Now, in the course of 3 minutes, I don't have time to argue what filter you need to go through to determine right or wrong, but for the purpose of our discussion, there is a line. So now, with that in mind, let's go into business tip number 2. You want to stay above the line. And you don't try to get to as close to it as possible. You really need to have some cushion between that. And what's so funny about this is in parenting. So many times our kids test us by knowing what the line is. Hey, curfew's at 11 o'clock and they show up at 10:55 or 11:05. They are dancing the line. But the perspective, let's say from our kids' point of view, is if curfew is at 11 o'clock, that you would be home at 10:30 to allow 30 minutes of grace for things to go wrong. Now let's bring it home, business owners. Whether we be talking about spending money or hiring the right person or making decisions that are ethical or not ethical, you want to stay way above the line. Just because there's a line there doesn't mean you should get close to it or touch it. You should always stay above it. And I would challenge you, as I'm challenging myself, that once we have that defined in our goals, we want to spread out the gap above the line as much as possible. Now, by the way, if you're a procrastinator like me, above the line could be planning ahead. Okay, so this is due at 3 o'clock. Doing it at 2:55 is too close to the line. Being above the line would be planning ahead of time, or better yet, days ahead of time, right? That's what I mean by above the line. Finally, business tip number 3 is that we tend to have this mentality of cheating and dipping below the line from time to time. Using the same analogy of time management, ooh, I let this slip, and now I'm 15 or 20 minutes late. Then that determines a pattern. So the reason the line is there in making your decision-making process, and the reason you want to stay above it, is that you've got to stop dipping below it. Let's say you have a credit card for emergency purposes, but your emergencies seem to occur every single month. You are dipping below the line. So our concept here is when determining right and wrong decisions or perspectives, we have to know the line, we got to stay above the line, and we really got to watch not going below the line. These are things I'm learning myself. Hopefully this is beneficial to you. As always, I want you to be awesome. Now go back to sleep.